Let's turn attention now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky reportedly says 2 Russian ballistic missiles have struck an educational facility and hospital in the central Poltava city, killing at least 41 people, injuring 180 persons as well. President Zelensky says many people are still trapped underneath the rubble. We have more details on the war situation.
The Russian Defense Ministry has acknowledged that Ukraine launched one of its biggest ever drone attacks against the country over the weekend, hitting a refinery and power station. But the ministry downplayed the effectiveness of the attacks, saying the 158 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed over the capital, Moscow. On its part, Ukraine's defense ministry says the drone strikes follows others launched in the past week, including one last Thursday that set fire to oil reservoirs at a refinery in the Rostov region of Russia. Meanwhile, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Mongolia, his first visit to an international criminal court member state since the ICC issued a warrant for his arrest last year. He was welcomed by Mongolia's leader at a lavish ceremony in the Asian nation's capital. Monday afternoon, a small group of protesters had gathered at the square, holding signs demanding President Putin, who they described as a war criminal, should not be allowed into the country. The protesters were prevented from getting close to him on his arrival by security forces. Ahead of his visit, Ukraine had asked Mongolia to arrest President Putin on his arrival.
And to Venezuela, where the airplane of the president, Nicolas Maduro, has been seized by the United States after it determined that its acquisition was in violation of U.S. sanctions, among other criminal matters. According to 2 U.S. officials, the aircraft has been flown to Florida. It's the latest development in what has long been a frosty relationship between the U.S. and Venezuela. A U.S. official says it is a message indicating no one is above the law and no one is above the reach of U.S. sanctions. A warrant has been issued by a judge in Venezuela for the arrest of the opposition candidate in the country's recent presidential election, Edmundo Gonzalez. It comes after a request by the Public Prosecutor's Office, which is loyal to President Nicolas Maduro. Mr. Maduro was declared the winner of July's election by the country's Electoral Council, reportedly stacked with government loyalists. The opposition says their polling data shows Mr. Gonzalez won the election. Staying on elections, but this time in the U.S., President of the U.S., Joe Biden, appeared at a rally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with Vice President and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris for the first time since dropping out of the presidential race. The pair spoke to mark the Labor Day holiday. They are hoping to shore up support from unions and blue-collar workers. 81-year-old Joe Biden promised he would be on the sidelines to do everything he can to help in the final stretch of the race. And to other stories, after a 13-hour flight from Rome, Pope Francis arrived in the Indonesian capital, Jakarta, on Tuesday to start a 12-day trip to Asia and Oceania that will also take him to Papua New Guinea, East Timor, and Singapore. It is the 45th trip of Francis' pontificate and the longest. This trip will bring to 65 the number of countries he has visited. The 87-year-old will spend 3 nights in majority Muslim Indonesia, where Catholics make up about 3% population. The Pope will be meeting with Indonesian President Joko Widodo today and tomorrow.